So we welcome Dr. Knapp as our first guest speaker of the day. Dr. Knapp is our in-house neuropsychologist. He came to be in the department 6 years ago and recently received tenure, so he'll be sticking around, we think, for a little bit longer. There are quite a few of you in here who are neuro majors, so you've met Dr. Knapp before, maybe you've had him in class, but he'll tell you about the work that he does, his path to get to where he is now, and show you a bit around the lab. So, thanks.
How's it going? Quieter group or louder group? Louder? Okay, good. So last fall's one with Mr. Wessel, he was like, they're quiet. So I talk about a couple different things when I come in, because I run the neuro major and minor, like how Dr. Meyer does HCFS. They're all within the psych department, so it's the Department of Psychology and Neuroscience. We'll probably be changing the name to add the human development side. It's just that because my specialty is neuro, I take all of the neuro majors for the most part, unless someone has like an already pre-existing real close relationship with someone else. Like everyone can kind of advise for it, but I take pretty much everyone because it's my field. I know more of the grad schools, those types of things. So I tend to handle a lot of those particular questions. Typically what they've done for some of the things that have come in from the past is given some background. So I talk about the major and minor, I'll talk about my background a little bit just for going through school, and then at the end I'm going to show off some of the labs, because I run two of our bigger labs for mostly juniors and seniors, but we have some sophomores that work in there. And if you're already declared, you might have gotten an email from me about how I'm taking people for the fall. Typically with what happens in the neuroscience major setup is it's more of the specialized version within psych. So the reason, if you ever look, why you can't major in one or double major and minor in one is because essentially if you follow the neuro path, you're taking a bunch of psychology PSY credits. Neuroscience is just more specific, it's more specialized. You're taking more of the health and brain and behavior type classes. My particular specialty is in the peripheral nervous system. So we do a lot with cardiovascular disease, cardiovascular type issues, and then a lot of right and left hemisphere and how the two lobes of the brain work together to essentially impact health as a lot of our results. We've done a wide range of stuff in the lab. We've done anxiety, depression, and aggression. We've done a lot now with positive psychology. We've done some with imagery and animals, so we've done some animal-based stuff, video-wise, not like working with animals, we do all human research. And then we've done a lot with health behaviors like eating, diet, exercise, perceptions on health, so your own perception of how healthy you are, and even some things with substance use. So we did spirituality, right, left hemisphere, and substance use one, because we had a person from philosophy and psych that was really interested in that, so we brought that into the lab. So usually if someone's in there for a few semesters, we just take ideas and try to convert them over. Typically a study that we'll run down the lab takes about a year. People usually jump on and jump off. So typically if you want to be a part of one, you're either working at the beginning of one on one term and like the end of another study. So like we'll be wrapping up one study, starting a new one, so you'll be in a bunch of different parts of different studies as people work on them. As for neuroscience as a field, the earlier part is that it is more of a foundations of brain and behavior. So where it's kind of across in this department is I always tell people we're closer to neuropsychology rather than neurobiology, because it's housed in the psych department, and that's my particular specialty. Neuropsychologists tend to do more human-based work, which is what I do. I do all human studies. I'm not really an animal researcher, whereas neurobiology tends to be more rats, cats, ferrets, that kind of thing. Where you're doing more of the actual surgeries, doing tracings and things like that. We do more physiology work than anything else, or neuropsych work where you're using tests to determine how well one of the hemispheres is functioning, frontal lobes, things like that. For interests, it's mostly interested for those that are interested in the psych side, so how people function, how people work, but want to get more into the biology, chemistry, and health aspects of it. So a lot of our electives are very much health-based classes or things on the senses. Drugs and behavior falls in there, the autism and cognitive classes fall in there. So it's kind of the tilt towards the health-focused side of psych. Reasonably, when it comes to like which to pick between them, it depends on what you're looking at. We have people from neuro go to psych grad schools because they're interested in clinical. They just want to work with the brain behavior clients, so like to be a neuropsychologist. So we get some people for that. We've sent some people to public health-based programs. I get a lot of the med school and PA type students that are interested in PA programs. I get a few for the OT, PT side along with the athletic training, so I get some minors from that area. So reasonably it's more for that element of it. If you're looking more at the developmental or the personality side, then you would go more towards the psychology side of the house. Reasonably when it comes to picking classes, usually I tell people if they're on the fence to take the first neuro class, which is in the fall. It's the PSY 250. Because reasonably, if you take that class, you'll have a good idea if it's going to work for you or not. If that ends up being your interest, then you would take the rest. If it's not, then that class counts as one of the biological experimental classes in the psych major. So that's usually why I tell people to hedge, because they can go back and forth. And I've had people go back and forth for a couple of years. Like you can usually, I tell people to declare one of them so you get started, and then take classes that count for both. And then if you're making up your mind, you've got some time, because then you're fitting both requirements, so no matter which way you go, you're fine. Probably the, not weirdest one, but the one that went the longest, I had someone that didn't officially make up their mind until senior year, when you have to pick an SCE project that is neurotint. We have even psych students that do the neuro projects because they do a lot of the cardio stuff. Like the dog lab group has like one neuroscience person and 3 psych. They just wanted to do the physio along with dogs. So we did that one and all for extra credit for a different class. So we put puppies back in the back hallway for a couple of weeks. As for other things, usually with ours, there's no internship required for the neuro one. But I have a few students that like to do the Cleveland Clinic one, just because autism tends to be a pretty popular field of interest, so doing a lot on a biological basis. You do take 2 extra departmental classes, so you take the bio class and the chemistry class. It does count. It's a little bit weird within the rules, but basically you get the social science would be the PSY 110, and then the natural science would be, because you took 2 natural sciences, they count it. Even though it's technically both within the major, they're not going to make you take a 3rd natural science to fill the natural science foundation. I have a few people that do, because if you go PA, or if you go, PA will cover another natural science for anatomy and physiology, or some people that go med or dentistry add physics. So I know for people that take a lot of those stuff classes. Typically for minors, it depends on what the person's personal interest is. I get a lot of chemistry if they're taking med school-based classes. I get a lot of bio minors for those that are taking PA, because the prerequisites for those programs involve to the point that you're 2 credits away, so people just take another class and get the minor while they're at it. Personally, I've seen a lot of music minors, just because I've had a lot of majors who were interested in music and on music scholarships. I've had a lot of language interest. We've had, 3 advisees to go do study abroad at this point, just because of personal interest and personal setup. It worked out well to go over in junior year, so a lot of them have gone over. And then I've had 1 double major within a language, because they were so close after a study abroad that we figured out how to get those extra classes in the major. So you don't have to major in a particular one. Chemistry is probably the most popular, if only because with a lot of the prerequisites for the grad schools that people were looking at, they just ended up with a minor anyhow. Bio is probably the 2nd most important one because of PA. So just based on personal interest is where I like getting from. Usually if you pick right, you know your class is coming in, we've been able to get a lot of double minors. Usually one that's closer related and one that's just not purely at random, but personal interest, not related to psych or bio at all. And those would be the language ones and the music ones. I've had theater people, those kind of things, where it's just personal and what you want to do. So that's the neuro field. What I tell people is if you do declare, like right now, sometimes they'll send the email, but you don't get switched over advisor-wise until after registration, because they try not to make it a mess with registration, make it confusing. So what I do is I still meet with people. Like I send an email when I get those and basically say that if you're interested, just sign up on my door. So right now, Hunter, you're already signed up, that's all that. If you are my advisor, you have to sign up because you have to get authorized. If you're not and you're interested in it, just see me after this or come by. I'll be running a lab meeting. Just sign up for a 20-minute meeting. What I usually do is help you pick all your classes, because if you're going to major in it anyhow, I'd rather you pick all the right classes for the fall. So I help people get their classes set up and then just take it to your current advisor and just say, here, I was told to take this because I already declared. And then usually they just go, okay, and you walk out. So you spend 20 minutes with me, but like 2 minutes with whoever your current advisor is. Because that's the whole goal to get set there. Typically what I say is, the 20-minute meetings we do for advising are just to pick your classes. If you're looking to do a second meeting where it's like do the 4-year plan, then just pick another time, because those take about 20 minutes to go through. What do you want? What are you looking at? Are we looking at PA? Are we looking at grad? Are we looking at a particular type of job? Where we want to balance it out. Some people want to work more with kids, so we take some extra psych classes that are developmental based. Try to figure out exactly what you're looking for as you go. So, I guess before I tell you any sort of background, because I always say the same, like how did you get there? Any questions on the neuro end of it? Anything you want to know about departmental stuff or what we do for classes and things like that? Some of you guys are louder. Nobody's louder. Yeah. Alright. So personal background, like how we get into the class and things like that, and where's my particular expertise coming from. I went to Pitt for undergrad, and they have a specific neuro program. Theirs is probably closer to the neurobio side of things, if only because there's more animal research. They have a separate psych department that had biopsychology, so theirs is probably closer to the biology side. I didn't know it existed coming into school. I came from a very weak high school. I usually use the example of we didn't know there were college scholarships that you could apply to. So the person that won my elementary school's award was a C high school student because she was the only one who physically applied. You didn't go to the guidance counselor high school. We didn't know any of that stuff. I come from a non-college family, so it was all guesswork. I started off pre-med for school because I didn't know about picking majors and was like, that's good. I like that stuff. So I just took general bios, chemistries, just kind of the basic gen ed first year. And then when it came time to pick majors and stuff like that, I just went over to how they have the giant list of all the papers and forms, and they do not faculty ones in Pitt, but you just basically go to a big center where there's a bunch of people that are just advisors. You meet with them; they're not specializing in a particular field. And I just picked it kind of at random. It was more human-based. The bio program at Pitt was more not animal-based, but they did a lot more bird research. It was evolutionary and bird-based. I just wasn't interested in it. I wasn't interested in the ecology side. I wasn't interested in the bird research. So I didn't want to do biology. I wasn't particularly interested in doing chemistry as a separate major. And those were two of the ones for pre-med. And neuro was one that was brought up because I was interested in the human-based research. So I didn't know it until I found out about it in the second semester freshman year, and then took the first class of it in the fall of my sophomore year. And it was kind of like how we do things here. You take an intro psych class in your first year. You don't really take the neuro class until the second year, or if you came in with intro psych. Usually you don't take it unless you came in with an intro class and stuff like that. So that's really how I got set up into it. I took the first class, liked it. It was just a basic intro to neuroscience type class. And then for the most part, stayed just pre-med, looked at different things. It wasn't really until I started changing my mind until junior year. Most students in our department were recommended to work in a lab to boost the chances of med school, boost the chances of grad school. And I worked in a lab that did the vestibular system, which is part of the inner ear that handles balance, handles things like blood pressure. Like if you stand up real quick and your body doesn't adjust, it's one of those things that adjusts that so that you don't pass out from a lack of blood going to the brain. So I got interested in that because one of the reasons was the guy was known for, if you worked for him, you were getting in somewhere. You were going to have to do a lot of work, but he was a big name, could write you some big letters, that kind of thing. And the research-wise was connected to NASA to a degree, and I've always been interested in that. Like I'd always been torn between the neuro and then going into physics for the astronaut side of the house. So I was interested in the lab itself. We did a lot of work with cats. And seeing what happens to the cardiovascular system if the vestibular is damaged. So where does the vestibular system work with the heart to really keep blood pressure and everything in line? So it's a lot of different things. As an undergrad, I mean, you don't get to do the surgery part of surgery, but in your second semester you can start sewing things, which is a lot harder than it looks because it's a moving target when it's internal. If you ever see some of the stuff that you get to use in those kind of labs, they heat as they cut through. So you actually sear the vessels as you're going through. So it's kind of neat stuff. But it's not for everyone. Like I didn't mind working with cats. I usually use the example of them in class. We had one die in a surgery. And if you work with an animal for 6 months to train it, and it dies suddenly, people took a day off after. Like the lab was given the day off. Like not everyone can work with animals. Rats sometimes a little bit easier. There were dog labs on our floor, and when I mentioned that in class, people were like, no, I couldn't work in a dog lab. I know people who've worked with apes before. They have monkey labs at certain schools. Essentially, though, it depends on what level you're doing. Not all of them are surgery and the death, like chronic studies. Lots of them are long-term studies where you're studying, you're watching, these kind of things. But I enjoyed it. I could do the animal side, but I was more interested in human-based research. My senior year, I worked in a cognitive lab where we looked at gesturing and how people use gestures to make decisions. So it's a couple different types of things. We were watching, it's basically NASA. Do you guys know, you ever heard of the Curiosity rover, the one that's on Mars? The thing that landed up there? So I'm old enough that basically Curiosity came second. Spirit and Opportunity I think is the one still going. We were watching them in the first like 90 to 120 days when that thing landed. So how they were trying to figure out, all right, we've got 90 days until this thing breaks, where do we want to go? And to give you the perspective of it, it's now at like 15 years, 16 years it's been up there. So we were looking at the first like it started with 90 days and then we just kept getting data because it didn't break. But we're trying to figure out how they make decisions. So they would make decisions by like trying to pretend like Mars is in front of you. And does that help people understand? So if you're gesturing and you're drawing, does that mean people are giving you more positive understanding results versus like pretending like you're writing on a whiteboard or trying to pretend like you're on Mars and you're pointing in general directions? Like what types of decisions can be made cognitively? And that lab got me really interested in research. So I split a lot of my applications. I went part for research, part for med school, because I really, over the past 2 years, gotten very focused on doing research. Most of my research then was interested in humans, and it was cardio-based or neuropsychology-based. So I looked at a couple of labs that were pain-focused, so how the brain impacts pain and perception. As for picking, I could have went either way. I didn't really have a true preference. What ended up deciding it for me is I got into the weakest med school, like the one I liked the least, and it was about $70,000 in loans a year because it was West Virginia's program and it was way through the roof. And I got into my favorite grad school and that was a free ride. So coming from my particular background, I went with a free ride. I could have liked either of them. I didn't really have a particular preference. It's just that was my favorite of one, the least favorite of the other. So I went with the grad school side of the house. grad school program, it's a psychology program, so it's biopsychology. There's no real difference with my research. My research could be in either area. It's just the labeling of the program. When I went to Virginia Tech, they didn't have a neuro program, and now they do. So I was doing that type of work, just not in the program I was in as such. So it's kind of a weird and different background. As for the teaching side, usually if you go to grad school, lots of the big research ones, it's a lot of grad students that teach. Like on our end, most of the classes were taught by grad students. Like here, we teach pretty much every single class. Down there, you would teach one class. At its worst, you'd have someone that's faculty that would teach one class a year. And that was just only because research was the big thing. Research is the heavy end side of it. I got more interested in the teaching. I like a balance where I'm running labs and teaching at the same time. So that's kind of why I came to a place like this. I was looking between undergrad positions like this one and then master's programs where you teach like one undergrad, one master's, and do research. So that's kind of what I was looking for. I skipped the postdoc side just because I didn't want to do one. Usually most people in my field do a postdoc before they come into a position. That's pretty traditional. I took a chance of applying to jobs first with the understanding if I didn't get any, I'd start applying for postdocs in February. So that was just a decision I had made where I could have applied for R1 once, but I didn't want to do research-specific jobs, so I thought I had a chance to grab something at high school. So that's really how I kind of waxed and waned through it. I really didn't get focused right away, and that's just because I came from a place that didn't know anything about college. So a lot of it was finding out what was there. The knowledge of college was lower in that era. And it just kind of dictated what I was looking at. So, reasonably, I will field anything you want to know about pretty much anything, teaching, research, or just background ideas and things that you're looking at. Yeah.
Did you think about any internships while you were in undergrad, or besides for doing research labs?
Honestly, I'm trying to think if I really even understood the internship side in undergrad. Here, we talk about it a lot more than when I said Pitt. It was not required for neuro. Research theses, if you wanted to do like an honors thesis, which what I did, they were part of the program. You get credits for them. Internships weren't. I don't know if I even really knew what an internship was outside of friends doing like co-op programs in engineering. So if I had to guess on my memory, I would say I didn't consider it at all. So I'm not even sure I knew about internships when I was in undergrad. Now, personally, now I know about them, I do even recommend it sometimes for the neuro program if you're interested in doing more of a clinical type practice, just to experience. Because research and internships are very different. Yeah.
Is there much of a job field just with a neuro undergrad degree, or is it pretty much you have to go on to grad school?
It depends. It's going to be similar to psych with a little bit of a built-in advantage. The advantage of it versus the psych when it comes to just bachelor's level is that neuro can usually count as a social sciences degree or a natural sciences degree. So it opens up a lot more research lab type work for like things like cancer centers and other things. I usually try to use the analogous representation that like with psych, you're going to be a person who, if you go out and you work at an agency with a bachelor's, you're going to be the person who just gets the work to do and you don't get to make any real decisions. You would see some of that in the neuroscience side, where a lot of times you would be the person in the lab who is doing the lab work. You can still work through the field and get promoted, a lot like if you take a bio degree and you go out and you start doing the lab experience. Most of our people start to work towards like more human-based labs than animal labs, I would say, where you're bringing people into the lab, you're researching them, you're studying them. A few have gone towards the animal tech side. We're working in what's it called, the bigger university hospital type settings. I would say you're going to see more of that And then the other side of what people do is similar to psych, where you're working for an agency, you're seeing clients, you're getting the books of how you would do the treatments. We've sent people to do more of our brain-based ones. So Beth Bauer, someone who graduated a few years ago, she works for an agency handling all of their brain clients. So stroke people, injury, those that basically are struggling to function because she has the expertise in that area. For applications, when we're looking at seniors, for people who are applying for jobs, we look at anything that psych would qualify for, anything that bio would qualify for. You can usually apply to both because neuro is going to fall in between them. And then kind of working for natural science and social science type jobs. So overall, market's a little bit stronger because you have two options of where you want to go for, but the course load is a little bit harder because you have to do the chemistry, you have to do the bio, and the classes themselves tend to be a little bit harder because a lot more memorization of parts. So it's a trade-off that usually you're going to have to do a little bit more work, but job market-wise gives you a little bit more opportunities because you take all the psych jobs, all the bio jobs, and apply for both. Bio jobs, sometimes though you'll be at a little bit of a disadvantage because yours is a mix of psych and bio. Psych usually gives you an advantage to a degree. Yeah.
Do grad programs look more highly on people that work with as a research assistant or in a research lab compared to somebody that does not?
From what we've seen over the past few, yes, that the research does give you an advantage. And part of that's because of like the schooling side of grad school. They basically told you in my program and a few others that if you're getting all A's, you're not working hard enough in lab. Like GPA in grad school is a different animal than the GPA in undergrad. Now mind you, if you're not doing well at all in the classes, that's a big concern. But for the most part, they want to focus on the research. And why they like to see research in undergrad is for the burnout side. That some really good students can't handle the grad school work because it's not classes. It's like a job. So why they want you to be in a lab is to know that you actually like doing it, that you like the experience. Same with people on the clinical side. That's why they like to see internships. Can you do the work that we're going to bring you in to do? And we've been pretty beneficial from ours. Usually we get people on presentations. We've had a few papers, but those wax and wane dramatically. But working as an undergrad gives you a lot of big advantages. It gives you a more detailed letter. Like if you work for any of us, it helps to show that you have the experience and things like that. But I would say if you have two students, 3.7, one of them has lab versus the other doesn't, the lab person has an experience advantage. So that's pretty consistent because then you show you can do the work, you show you can understand, you show you can work as part of the group. You got the personality for it, you're not going to turn off the rest of your lab mates. That's why we do push it. If you ever, when you get to the middle levels, and for our SC, that's one of the reasons why we push the methods, push the stats, push the research, because it does give us, as a program, a higher rate of people going to graduate school. Because experience usually trumps some of the GPA stuff. GPA is going to be a huge one. I'll always keep that as high as humanly possible. Things. 2 minutes to get the time to work. Okay, I'll show you some of the lab spaces. I believe our current study was starting when this class began. It's about done, so I should be able to show you everything. If you have questions, feel free to email me. So mine is just nepm@Mount Union. If you are looking for advice, or I saw someone just declared last night, I don't know which class they're in. But if you do want to have an appointment because you're declaring anyhow, even though I'm not going to be the one who could authorize you unless they do switch it over fast, just sign up on my door. There's 20-minute time slots throughout the week, next week, and then throughout the following week. And usually I can answer pretty much any questions, get you set up. If you're on the fence between them, I just always say take the 250 class in the fall, and you know pretty much right away if it's interesting. If it's interesting to you, then you want to take it. If you're like, nah, it's too much memorization, the parts I don't like, then it's probably not right. Because we do have to start with like a baseline of here's the parts of the brain, here's how they work, just to kind of get things moving before you can do some more of the applied stuff, detailed stuff, these things. Other than that, anyone know how to turn that on?